The regular meeting of the Louisville Metro Outreach Control District is called to order at 10 a.m. Wednesday, November the 21st. Thank you for your attendance, and I think we can just go right into the agenda. We do have a quorum here. We have board members. Any public recognition, Mr. Tyler? Introductions?
Introductions, yes, I do. Actually, we have some new staff that are on board, so I'd like to introduce Jamie Zonka. She is the Environmental Compliance Assistance Coordinator. Jamie, if you'll raise your hand and let everybody see you. And then we also have a new Compliance Officer, Matt Dwyer, and I don't think he's out in the field right now. He's out in the field doing his job, so I think for the first time, correct me, Steve, we have a full house in compliance section, so it's been a long road, but happy to get there.
That's great. Do we have any public, I guess we've already had the introductions. The minutes have been submitted for review. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Any of the board members? There have been no corrections. The minutes are approved as distributed. Public comment?
Yes, this morning, Aisha Wilson. Oh, you just want to be added to the list. You don't want to speak. I apologize. No, sorry. No. Thank you for coming. I was invited by my professor. Thank you. Sorry.
None, okay. We, unfinished business?
None this morning.
New business?
No, sir.
Committee reports? I think committee.
We appointed Dr. May to the policy committee. So those committees are now ready for work.
Thank you. Thank you. Staff report, Dr. Kelly.
Thank you very much. I'm going to start out this morning with a shameless plug for the West Jefferson County Community Task Force. And in conjunction with the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, they will present their environmental justice workshop or environmental justice conference this coming November the 27th. It will be held at Simmons College of Kentucky at 1000 South 4th Street, and that'll be between 8:30 and 5 p.m. It is open to the public. You can go to eventbrite.com and sign up. The tickets are free. There will be speakers from the University of Louisville, Metro Louisville Health Department. There will also be a presentation by the district, and then from the NAACP on energy, justice, and others. And so I think I saw her come in. I will allow her, Chairman Hilton, if it's all right with you, Arnita would like to plug her own event.
Okay. Well, you said just about it all. If you go on our site, www.cctf.com, as soon as you hit that site, it's right there on the front. The notice is right on the front, right beneath it says register. That's the easiest way. I've been getting calls and people having trouble getting, especially if they don't do Facebook or they so we put it right on the website where you can just go right on the face. There it is. You just plug it up. But we're really excited. I told people we're having trouble getting some of the pictures. People don't want to give us pictures of themselves. So you may see pictures from yearbook. I threatened to do yearbook and put it on. So, but we're really excited about it. Anybody who wants to set up a table, just let me know. We can set the table up. It'll be right there when people come in, so they'll see you. Anything you want to know, everything you want them to know, will be, you can put it there. I think that's it.
And I think as a reminder, there are flyers out on the front desk as you come in if you want to grab one, so you can take that information with you. All right. So first of all, my apologies to the board for missing the October board meeting. I understand it went very well, and I want to thank Assistant Director Hamilton for stepping in and doing the work of the district. I think as you know, or maybe you don't know, we were, along with Michelle King, we're at the National Association of Clear Air Agencies fall meeting in Cleveland, Ohio. And so as always, these conferences just provide an excellent opportunity for networking, looking at best practices, getting some updates from EPA, and really just to talk a little shop with our peers in the industry. But let me just give you just a few of the agenda items. It really was a very well-rounded agenda. So there were discussions on NACS implementation updates, policy and technical updates, some resilience and sustainability discussion, the latest issues on reducing mobile sources and fuel emissions, discussion on air quality and public health, tools for achieving environmental justice goals, and then we had the opportunity to have a very lively locals-only meeting to talk about those issues that are really just specific to local air agencies. So that's always just a good opportunity, because what we experience really can be different from what states experience. So that's always a good opportunity. This, of course, is not an exhaustive list, but I think you can see a very well-rounded, very well-attended conference. On October the 19th, the Louisville Sustainability Council held their Sustainability Summit. I think this was number 5. Very good. Their 5th Sustainability Summit. We had opening remarks from Mayor Greg Fisher, and then also it was held at the University of Louisville from Dr. Neely Benaputi, the new university president. And the keynote address was delivered by Dr. David Orr, and his topic was the missing politics in environmental and sustainability education. This is just always a good event. You get a lot of folks from the community, a lot of advocates, there's a lot of discussion. They always have some additional conversations just to spur folks to talk about environmental issues, air quality issues. There was a presentation from Dr. Rooney Bahatnagara of the University of Louisville Environment Institute. Emily Chandler spoke, Maria Cotter from the Office of Sustainability, Eric Freelander from the Office of Resilience with the city. And there were numerous breakout sessions on various topics throughout the day. And so, again, just a great event. If in the future you have the opportunity at the next annual summit, I encourage those who can make it to make it. It is a good time to talk to folks who have the same concern we all have in this room about our environment. In the past month, we also had our, I think, 3rd Air Researchers meeting and update. And as always, it's just an opportunity for the EPA RARE team to provide local researchers with an update on the RARE project that's taking place here in Louisville. We've talked about it many times here in this board meeting. It also allowed local researchers to talk a little bit about some of the projects that they have going on in the city. So just an opportunity for good exchange with folks doing air quality research in the community. It was held at the Innovation Lab with the Office of Performance Improvement in downtown Louisville. The following night at Stephen Foster Academy, we had the opportunity to have a RARE community meeting, and this is an opportunity to bring the community up to date on the RARE project. And in this case specifically, to start talking about some of the results that they're seeing. We talked yesterday morning, but I will tell the board that meeting really did get a little bit off the rail. The community was really concerned about a couple of things. We talked about some spikes that we saw, and they were concerned about transparency and communication of that information to the community. And we didn't really have a chance to complete that presentation. But I will point out to the board that that's not entirely accurate, and always we can do a better job, but we had an opportunity to bring some of the community advocates in prior to this meeting a month or so ago into our offices after hours, and we gave basically that same presentation explaining the spikes that we saw, going through the research that and the monitoring data that was uncovered slide by slide with advocates in the community so they would know what we had seen. We talked about it, told them what we knew up to date. So we have attempted to be as transparent, communicate that information best we can. We have not been able to put that information out on to the website as we intend to do it and as we will do, and that has been an additional source of frustration, I think, for the community. But we want to make sure that we can put accurate information out there, information that will be beneficial for folks to see, and we just haven't gotten there yet. So I think it's important to note that we can always do better, and so that conversation has spurred us to look at additional ways to communicate this information, to look for additional ways to communicate with the community, and quite honestly, to grow that base of folks who are able to attend these meetings and hear what we have to say. It was not a huge community contingent at that meeting, and so our goal is to find additional ways in terms of reaching out maybe to churches, reaching out to neighborhood associations, finding other folks in the community can help us network that message out so that we can get more folks throughout Rubbertown and West Louisville community and anywhere else in the community to attend these meetings and learn what's going on. It really is important work. I think the board understands the importance of the research that RARE is doing, and I think they understand the importance of the air toxics monitoring that we are doing, because that topic came up. And we would love to have more people understand and be able to interact with us and talk to us about the work that's being done in Louisville. So that's all I will say about that. We will continue to work hard to get that information out, to provide as much communication as possible, to be as transparent as possible. But we're also going to be very smart, very prudent in how we put that information out there, because we don't want to do anything that would not be productive in that process. And I think
I do. In terms of, Keith's right, managing the data that comes from our air toxics monitoring, it's a lot of data, and being able to get that information into the office has been one of the elements that we've worked with the manufacturer of that equipment to put in place. But separately, I do want to follow up. The presentation that Keith is talking about, that we brought the folks in from the community to share before it was presented at a national conference, has been posted to our website. So that data is available. It is a presentation. Anyone has any questions where to find it? It is under the Regionally Applied Research Effort link, and it's a August 2018 presentation that was given at a national conference. And it does describe the spikes. There have been 3 spikes. 2 have come from the north of our firearms training site, where we don't have a source. We're investigating that. I see Larry Taylor is here this morning from the division, the Department of Environmental Protection in Kentucky. We've investigated it initially as a potential rail car release. With the second one, we've expanded our investigation into talking to the Division of Waste Management about whether or not it could possibly be a historic release to soil nearby. With respect to the third release, it is from soil to the south, and we're continuing to investigate that occurrence. That's where we're at.
Any questions from the board members? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that additional clarification. So, just finished the ozone season, and our own Thomas Norwell was kind enough to put together a summary of the 2018 ozone season. So I'm going to run through some facts here. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. So for 2018, total air quality alert days for 2018 was 12. The total actual ozone exceedance days was 11. Our first air quality alert day came on May the 24th. Our last air quality alert day came on September 19th. The first actual exceedance day came on June 7th. The last exceedance day was September 14th. June was the most hectic month for us. That's when we had the bulk of our alerts and exceedance days. And beyond that, there were only a handful of bad air days spread out through July, August, and September. And we had none in April, May, or October. Of the 11 exceedance days, 5 would not have been violations of our own standard at 75 parts per billion. So here's a quick breakdown on the actual exceedance days. 9 were for unhealthy for sensitive groups, or orange on the scale, the color scale. We had 2 unhealthy for all days, which would be red on the scale. And then just to give you some relative information about previous years, we had more exceedance days in 2018 than we did in 2017. We only had 6 in 2017 compared to the 11 we had in 2018. But there were fewer than we had, and I think everybody remembers this been on this board, in 2016 when we had 19 exceedance days. And then finally, there were no PM 2.5 alerts days or exceedance days for 2018. Just a quick summary. Yes.
I have a quick question. Seems like we have a lot of exceedances in June. How does that compare to 2017? They all seem like we had quite a few in June. Does that compare favorable to 2017?
I'm going to put my 2 cents in for Billy here. I think they are coming earlier in the year than we expected. In the prior year, 2017, most of them were earlier in the season.
From my recollection, last year was a little bit in that middle of summer had less than most spring and fall. So it's been very difficult to predict as far as, I mean, this year's been a very wet year, which is good for us breeding wise. I mean, not good for producing ozone. Some of the weather patterns have been shifting around the last few years. It's been sort of hit and miss on when the ozone seasons.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Yeah.
Another comment, besides the actual total number of days, I think it's important to know how many consecutive days that you end up having, because, in terms of tolerating things on a health perspective, one day you can stay inside, but when it's, several days in a row, I mean, they're going to end up having to go out for whatever reason. So I think it's important to track consecutive days also.
That's excellent, and we can.
I'm Commodore. I can follow that. I wanted to say that there were sort of a cluster. That's a good point you made. That's why I mentioned June was sort of that period. If it wasn't for the June exceedances, we would have been more like last summer. So I've been tracking this since I've got here 7 years ago, and it does seem like you have to spread out all the summer, but every summer it seems, with a few exceptions, we have one bad week where it just, they all just, in a row. So that's a good point.
Also, I noticed from the air quality report, there's a 3-year trend of increasing design value. We're not really making progress there. Do you know whether is influencing this? For example, have the number of days above 90 degrees also been increasing?
We know that weather plays a huge part in the formation of ozone, but that is actually something good to take a look at in terms of the high number of 90+ degree days that we had this past summer, and I think the previous year was relatively high compared to what we have historically. So I think that's something that we can take a look at and see if there is any correlation if we're seeing, and that's something we'll keep an eye on, if there's any trend related to increased actual temperatures outside, and then the number of ozone days or alert days that we have. As you know, weather plays a critical role.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, recognize Chair.
I just wanted for you to remind me, when was it they changed the ozone standards?
2015, it went from 75 parts per million to 70.
Are we ever going to meet those standards? You ever think we'll ever meet them?
So we're in marginal non-attainment, which means we're just not quite getting there to the lowest limit, or the lowest level of non-attainment. And from EPA's predictions, of course, we're going to meet that standard by the deadline. So that's what our planning will be working towards, and we're confident we're going to meet that.
talked about the fact that we will have our PAMS implementation due for July 2019. We have received partial funding for that. PAMS is the photochemical assessment monitoring system that we're being required to put in by EPA. It was scheduled for, as I said, for July 2019, although there has been some discussion at EPA about delaying the implementation date. But we got partial funding available, and so not all the funding, but we're going to move forward with the purchase of our GC. So that part is moving along. Just some real quick hitters. From a staffing standpoint, we are working on 2 additional positions, a personnel manager position that we've made a decision on, and that paperwork is at HR. We hope to have that resolved here very, very quickly. And then we have a posted engineer 1 position that we'll be scheduling some additional interviews on.
Sounds like you're pretty well up to full staff, isn't it? Not quite.
Getting closer than we've been in about 4 or 5 years. I also wanted to let the board know that I attended the Paint Council luncheon this past week. I gave them just a brief update on our ozone planning and an invitation for them to participate in the ozone stakeholder process. And then I offered them a suggestion that they might want to get involved in the community by providing low VOC paints to some of our nonprofit community partners that are doing home revitalization to the community. So they seem receptive to that idea, and it's just an opportunity for them to help out in the way that they can. Wanted to let the board know that Michelle and I are still involved in the Resilient City process. The current part of this process will continue through January. We have bi-weekly meetings that we're attending on that, and so when there's some additional information and progress made, either Michelle and I will make a presentation to the board, or if it's appropriate, we may have someone from 100 Resilient Cities come in and talk about their findings and what their plans are moving forward. We also had the opportunity over this past month to meet with Shannon Baker. Ms. Baker is the new Director of Advocacy for the American Lung Association, so we had the opportunity for her to come by the office and give basically our APCD 101, talk a little bit about the agency, what we do, the work that we have going on and plan to do. I feel like it was a very productive conversation, and I think it opened up the doors for us to have additional dialogue and opportunities for us to work with folks at the American Lung Association moving forward. So they had someone new, and we had the previous head of the Louisville office into the office to do the same thing. So we take that opportunity every time to meet with folks who are doing work in the community that's related to air quality, and bring them in and talk to them about what we do. Now, this didn't happen last month, but it's coming up next week, and so I wanted to make the board aware of it. We're very excited. City of Louisville, along with the district, will be hosting the CESAR Metro 4 Fall meeting. And this is a meeting of air directors and EPA personnel from our southeastern states. And so we get together twice a year, and this time we're having a fall meeting here in Louisville. So it's going to be at the Brown Hotel starting November the 28th through the 30th. There'll be about 60 plus air regulators from southeast states, and then also representatives from EPA and also from the state Department for Air Quality. And they'll be in town as we do in these conferences to talk about issues of concern for the type of work that we all do to improve air quality. Additionally, we'll also be having a bus tour for that group, and so we're going to have them take a tour of Louisville, looking at primarily Rubbertown, but we'll take the opportunity to look at some other sites of concern here in Louisville, and so we think that's really going to be good, give us an opportunity to show them some of the issues and concerns and things that we have to deal with, and there are like concerns in our community. This is going to spur a conversation about how you deal with when you have groups of, say, in our case, chemical industries together, and we can all talk about how you address them and things that are going on. So that'll take place next week. We are looking forward to having those folks in, and then obviously at the next board meeting we'll give a full report of how that conference that really kind of covers my part of the director's report, and so unless there are questions, we have some other presentations that will be part of the director's report.
I just have one comment. Russ Barnett from the University of Louisville, he's very knowledgeable about the tour of Rivertown. So if you need some extra expertise, Russ is very knowledgeable.
Now, we run into Russ and work with him all the time. So, he is well known to the district. And so as part of the other project, we're going to get an update on an odor issue that has been occurring in our Shelby Park neighborhood. This has been going on for several years, and it has just been a mystery. So Steve Crevette, along with some members of his team, are going to bring us up to date on that investigation.
Since 2015, we've been receiving complaints of an ammonia or cat urine odor from the Shelby Park neighborhood. District compliance officers have been out and observed this odor as well. It's very intermittent. We have been unable to locate the source of the odor. This summer and early fall, it was incredibly strong, and we received numerous complaints, and we're in the area almost daily. Board members may have received a letter from the neighborhood association talking about this. It's frustrating for us to have observed this odor for so long and not been able to find a source. Normally things like a feral cat population, a meth lab, or an abandoned house with illegal dumping is something where we would get complaints right around the neighborhood and be able to trace the smell back. This smell has been very intermittent. You can be in the area and get it at one street corner, walk away, not find it, and then it pop up a couple blocks further away. So we've been pretty frustrated by this. To provide additional metro service for the area, we set up an interagency group to investigate. On November 8th, APCD, Codes and Regs, MSD, residents of the area, and Metro Health and Wellness met at the corner of East Ormsby and Preston Street, broke into small groups and canvassed the neighborhood looking for odors. All the groups observed the odor, but again, it was intermittent and light in places. One group stopped at Fourth Technologies, a chemical and pigment manufacturer just south of East Ormsby, and observed a similar odor in one of their rooms of their facility. At the end of the tour, we met back at the corner of East Ormsby and Preston. And while some of the groups were waiting for everybody else to return, they observed the odor very strongly and traced it back to a vented manhole cover in the center of Ormsby, right at Preston Street. Another group saw a MSD worker pulling a water sample from the sewer under East Ormsby, and it was bright green. When we asked why it was bright green, the MSD worker told us that the water discharge from Fourth Technologies comes down the sewer directly underneath East Ormsby and colors the water in the area. We've begun to work with our peers at MSD to determine what they can do to resolve this odor, whether it's through their industrial discharge permitting system or their physical infrastructure changes underneath Ormsby. We're sort of looking to them to come up with a solution to this issue now, and we think we've traced it to the sewer underneath Ormsby.
Any questions?
Fourth Technologies.
What do they do?
So they take pigments and mix them up in different concentrations. And one of the things they have that makes the water green is the tracer dye that they put in like antifreeze and stuff. So, I mean, it was not a Irish green, it was a glow in the day green. And just one of the smells that was observed was similar, but not exactly like. This odor in Shelby Park is a very pronounced odor. You smell it, you know it's what they're talking about.
So they have no concern that there's any sort of health hazard associated with?
We looked at the stuff on Fourth and don't think there is anything. They have very low air emissions, so we were looking for an air source and did not find one. So this is looking like something coming out of the sewer. It may be a chemical reaction happening down in the sewers from what they're discharging.
Keep us up to date. Curious about what the cause of that. It's kind of strange.
But I think it's just,
Is there, I would presume that it's a matter of concentration too then, so, are there different samplings of the water at different points then?
They take samples at least from one spot at the end of Ormsby. I'm not familiar with how their sampling goes.
So MSD is another regulatory agency like APCD is, and they have certain companies that are significant industrial users, and they have limits on wastewater that can be discharged to the MSD system. So that's what Steve talks about, working with MSD. We'll work back through their significant industrial user policy as a start, then take some further steps if necessary.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just point out, I went out on November 8th, I just wanted, but I also, when we started picking up these, we drive by after work, or if I was out during the day, and you can just pick it up on certain days or certain times. And I have actually been out and smelled it, and it's really strong, and it is an overpowering odor that you just simply don't want in your community. So we're working really hard to try to pinpoint this, and I think I'll work with MSD. Hopefully, we have pinpoint where this is originating. So we'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
And also, just what is the chemical that it is that we are smelling then? I understand it smells bad, but what is it that we are smelling?
So we're not the only community that has faced this kind of cat urine odor. There was another community in Wilmington, North Carolina, and they traced it back to volatile thiols that were combining with the hydrogen sulfide normally in the sewer system to create that kind of cat urine odor. And the interesting thing they noted is that the odor became more pronounced farther from the source, as opposed to what we typically find is that it's more concentrated near the source. So it's a unique occurrence, and again, one we think that MSD is going to be able to address.
So it's sulfide.
Well, hydrogen sulfide is normally in the sewer system. That's that kind of rotten cabbage egg kind of odor. This is vastly different, and Keith is not making it up. When you encounter it on a strong day, it's like hitting a wall of odor, and it is just different than what's normally in the sewer system. One of the other features of the area is that it's still an older neighborhood, and many of the homes have their downspouts still connected to the sewer system, and that's another path where odors can come up around people's homes, so it makes finding that odor that much more challenging. MSD has a downspout disconnection program where they'll pay people to disconnect their downspouts. We think that's something that would be good for the neighborhood, and we're trying to connect the folks at MSD with some council people to put that information in their newsletters and to go ahead and try to cut off that potential pathway for odors as well.
So Keith, I know MSD has given a presentation to the board before about another update. Is this something where we could ask to have them come and share with us how it's being resolved, since clearly people are thinking that it's an air issue, or just, I wonder if that's...
No, absolutely, especially if we're on the right path and we've identified the source of this. So we'd love to have them come in and talk about what they found and then how they're going to address that issue, because it is, if in fact originating as we think it is, it's really out of our hands, except for the fact that the odor reg is under us, and so it's left for us to deal with it. So.
I wonder whether the odor has been observed on the weekends.
We have reports from the neighbors that it is present on the weekends.
Just the company operating on the weekends.
I would suspect that this company operates when they have a warrant. It's not this larger production facility. I'm speculating there. They may have shift work on the weekends.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a couple more presentations as part of the director's report. And first we'll have Assistant Director Hamilton give a brief update on her conference she just attended with the Association of Clean Air Agencies, or APCA. And then following that, we'll have a PowerPoint presentation by Andrea Cooley, our air monitoring chemist, and she's going to give us a quick update on air toxics and our auto GC.
So our conferences are typically spread out a little bit over the year. This one was rescheduled due to hurricanes. It was held in Raleigh, North Carolina, and Hurricane Florence required us to reschedule. So we're all compressed here. But many of the same folks from USEPA were at the NACA conference, is at the Air Pollution Agencies or APCA conference that I attended. There is some overlap. There's a little bit of difference in direction. APCA is more of a technical problem-solving organization. NACA tends to be more of a policy leader. So gives you a good spread of what's going on in our world. One of the primary conversations that we had was around new and emerging contaminants. That is an area that we continue to see development in our work. It'll be a topic at the upcoming Metro 4 CESAR meeting as well. The most important takeaway for me was that APCD has been asked to submit its community engagement series as a best practices. NACA has an annual competition for state and local agencies like ours to share our best practices. And the comment that was made to me by Bob Hodenbosi, who's the longtime director of the Ohio Department of Environmental Protection, Mike Devonshire is shaking his head because he's been there for a very long time, was that there's no one else doing this type of work. So once again, APCD is on that leading edge. We'll make that submittal in spring when that becomes open and hopefully be selected as a best practice.
Thank you.
All right, we'll have a presentation. Andrea Cooper.
Good morning, Chairman Hilton, members of the board. So I'm here today to provide an update about the air toxics auto GC. So our auto GC system is manufactured by Chromatotech, but purchased through CAS. We've set the system up at our firearms training site to monitor air toxics, and we located it there because it is downwind of the Rivertown facilities, emitting many of the compounds that we're interested in monitoring. The system is unique in a number of ways. Normally with a gas chromatograph, we would sit on a bench top, but this one's broken up into components that fit in a rack that you would expect to see in an air monitoring shelter, so that's nice. It generates its own hydrogen and owns zero air, so we don't need compressed cylinders to supply those two gases. It has an internal calibration system of 4 gases, and it's actually not one GC, but 2. The first GC is to monitor the lighter VOCs, volatile organic compounds that we're interested in detecting, and then one to monitor the heavier ones. In either case, the data that's produced looks similar to what's there on the right. We call that a chromatogram. So the job of the system is to detect volatile organic compounds, and that's important for 2 reasons. One, because of air toxics, which is why we're located here at fire training, and that's important for human health standpoint. But also, VOCs are one of the things that participate in the chemical reactions to produce ground level ozone. And so this system is just monitoring VOCs. There are other air toxics, but it's only looking at the VOCs. So we've selected 65 volatile organic compounds for this auto GC to monitor at our firearms training site. Initially, 17 were chosen. Those listed in green are the Category 1 toxic air contaminants, or TACs, from the STAR program, just the VOCs. The ones in red are an additional 6 that are known from emission inventories to be emitted from facilities in Rivertown, but also play a role as photoreactive compounds in producing ozone. So those were the initial 17. And then we've added in all those you see in blue from the PAMS list. And Keith mentioned earlier, PAMS is Photochemical Assessment Monitoring Station. Those will be going online nationwide, including here at our Cannons Lane site in 2019. The objective of the PAMS program is to better understand ozone formation across the U.S. So one of the things that we'll be monitoring with an additional auto GC are these volatile organic compounds listed under the additional PAMS compounds. So we'll have 2 auto GCs come next year and be able to make comparisons between concentrations we see at firearms training versus Cannons Lane. This is a little blast from the past. The first GC with a flame ionization detector that I used looked very similar to this. It's an old Hewlett-Packard. a little more glamorous now, but the basic function hasn't changed as far as a benchtop GC goes. When you open the front panel of the GC, you're looking inside what's called an oven. In that oven hangs a capillary column. This one's probably 60 meters long, so it's very, very long, thin column, coiled up like a garden hose. And it's inside the oven so that heat can be applied to that column. And that's really where the magic of the GC happens. So now we can open up the cover of one of our GCs and see that it's quite a bit different. So what I'd like to do is walk you from collection to detection, what's going on in one of our GCs. So if we start with the pre-concentrator trap, we can set any length of time that we want to collect a sample. And it first goes there, onto the trap. Because a lot of VOCs in ambient air are low in concentration, we collect them there first to pre-concentrate them, and then heat that pre-concentrator up rapidly, backflush it with hydrogen gas, and then send it on to the column. We can't actually see the column for our GC in this picture. It is underneath where I've got a little chromatograph. So what we're seeing there is insulation surrounding a heater and our column. So it isn't an oven, a box like we saw in the previous picture, but it's still functioning in the same way. When that sample is swept onto the column, we call that point injection. And it's at that point that we start the clock. We're going to time the amount of time it takes for those compounds to travel through the column to the detector. Okay, so like I said, this is where the magic happens. Inside that column is what we call a stationary phase. It's a coating or a thin film on the walls of the column, and it is what allows all of the VOCs that we're trying to analyze to separate from one another in time. So they go onto the column together, but by the time they're detected, ideally, they each have their own separate time that they're detected. What allows the compounds to release from the stationary phase and then travel the rest of the way through the column is heat. So that's why we have a heater next to the column. So the temperature will determine when the compounds are detected. The stationary phase determines in what order. So once they exit the column and hit the FID, the flame ionization detector, a peak is generated. And if you look at the chromatogram on the right, the first peak observed is the peak to the left is the first compound that exited the column. What else I want to tell you? So with each peak, the FID gives you a retention time. And it is that retention time which identifies the compound that we're looking at. That's the only way for us to know what it is in our sample. So ideally, the sample goes on together, all the compounds are mixed together. The column will separate them one by one. And hopefully each peak has its own retention time. So from our early field evaluation, one of the first things that I wanted to do was just verify what are the retention times of the compounds that we're interested in detecting. And if those have changed since CAS gave them the retention times, reevaluate what they should be. In addition to that, if there are compounds that share a retention time, that prevents us from being able to identify what compound it is. And we call that coevolution. So I wanted to identify which compounds were coevoluting. To do this, I really only needed two things. First, the order in which the compounds exit the column. And each column in each GC has its own lineup. And second, I needed canisters with compounds we were interested in detecting, as well as others that the FID would respond to. EPA was kind enough to provide 4 different canisters. The numbers in parentheses show you the number of compounds in each canister. So I was able to look at a much larger set than even just the 65 that we were interested in. So this is just one chromatogram from the GC that analyzes the light volatile organic compounds. We call that our C3 to C6 GC. The C means carbons, and so the number tells you how many carbons in those compounds. So this was a PAMS canister run, and ideally this is what we would want our chromatogram to look like. Nice peak separation, good resolution of the peaks, and when we have something like this, then each peak gets its own unique retention time. From that, we can generate what's called a substance table. This is a lookup table that's programmed into the GC software, so that when we run an ambient sample or a calibration run or a blank, if a peak falls within one of these retention time windows, we call them, where we listed a minimum and a maximum retention time, then the software can identify that compound, identify that peak as a compound listed, and then calculate a concentration for it. So this is ideally what we would like to see. And with the C3 to C6 GC, there really were not coevolution issues. Now with the C6 to C12 GC, this is the GC analyzing the heavier amino acids. We saw coevolution in several places there. This is just one place that I've zoomed in on, and these are actually 3 canister runs superimposed on each other. So let's start with the methylcyclohexane peak. That's the tallest peak there. That compound was in the PAMS canister. Its retention time is around 448 seconds. So a good retention time window would be 443 to 453 seconds. We don't really like to go more than 10 seconds. If we then run a TO15 canister, and this is a toxics canister, it contains methyl isobutyl ketone, or MIBK. You can see its retention time is around 450 seconds, which falls within the retention time window for methylcyclohexane. So that's a problem, because if time is all we have to identify a compound, and these 2 compounds fall within the same window, we can't say with confidence which one it is, or maybe a combination of the 2. But there's no way to tease that out in this kind of a run. So that is what complete coevolution looks like. We also have cis-1,3-dipropene, which is in a different toxics canister. It's not a compound we selected to monitor, but the FID would still detect it if it was in the air. And so you can see that that one could potentially be an issue, because it's partially coevoluting with the methylcyclohexane. So really, what I'm hoping through this presentation is to give you a sense of what we've learned this year, what some of the challenges have been, and kind of slow down that progress of getting data reported. So I've talked about the coevolution issue. Next is retention time shifting. To look at this, we're going to go back to the C3 to C6 GC, again, that's analyzing the light VOCs. These are results from 2 different calibration runs. So we have the internal calibration gases. 2 of them are butane and hexane. The first run has peaks labeled as A. That was from the end of April. The second run on May 28th, those peaks were labeled B. So you can see from the end of April to end of May, we have about a 20-second retention time shift. So if we're keeping our windows for each compound at 10 seconds, it's possible that we're not even identifying these 2 compounds anymore. So that's a problem. Now, calibration runs are done every night. This is just 2 done a month apart. But to show you what the trend was over the course of that month, you can see that the retention times were getting earlier and earlier. So I happened to mention that This seemed worse, this retention time shifting seemed worse on rainy days. So the suggestion was made to take a look at dew point and to see if there's any correlation with the retention times. So I did that. Dew point is in blue, and now we're just looking at hexane's retention time, but butane had the same relationship. And so you can see these two factors, dew point and retention time, are very much inversely related. So as humidity in the air is going up, the retention time is getting earlier and earlier. So then I got curious, how long has this been an issue? So this is going all the way back to February, and we see that these two parameters have been linked for a long time. And dew point is controlling when our compounds are coming off the column. And if we need that to be the same every time, then this has to be addressed. So there are some devices in place, Nafion dryers, to try and dry the airstream before it enters the column, but it's not working efficiently enough. Okay, so we're just adding to the list here of things that we've learned. The last thing that I wanted to discuss were the columns and the temperatures, because as I said before, the temperature of the column is what determines when the compounds we're interested in detecting are released from that stationary phase on the column and actually detected. So it's important that the column temperature be accurate and the same right in front of them. So each column goes through its own temperature profile. If we look at the C3 to C6 GC first, the profile in green is what was programmed for the column temperature to be. So it starts at ambient, is ramped up at a set rate to 200 degrees Celsius, stays there for about 10 minutes before it's cooled off back to ambient. The trace in purple is what's actually going on. So you can see from there that it does reach 200 degrees, but late. And with the C6 to C12 GC, the target temperatures are the red profile. And then blue is what's actually going on. So I don't know if you can tell, but it almost reaches its target temperature, but not quite before cooling back off. So the good news is the purple trace and the blue trace are being followed every time by those columns. So they're consistent. They're precise, but they're not meeting what's been programmed for them, so they're not accurate. So what that suggests is there's either a problem with the insulation surrounding the column and the heater, or there's a problem with the heater itself. So a little timeline just to give you a sense of where we've been, where we are, and what we have left to do here. The GC was acquired back in September of 2017. I was hired at the end of February of this year and have been evaluating the system ever since, doing these kinds of tests, communicating with the vendor, trying to come up with some solutions to address these issues. And from many of those conversations, they are actually modifying and updating our system now. So just to jump here. So the system is actually at CAS now, which is in Cincinnati, and they're addressing a lot of the issues that I've presented here today. In addition to that, because of some of these issues identified, they realized that all of these PAM systems that are getting ready to come online, those auto GCs, also needed to be updated. So ours isn't the only system being updated. And now when we get our PAM system, it should be more fuel ready than this one was initially. When our system returns, we will have a calibration cylinder ready to run nightly. So rather than just have those 4 compounds that are built into the system, we'll have 68 VOCs to analyze every night to give us that retention time standard. Agile makes our data handling software, AirVision, so they're in the process of updating AirVision to be able to handle all of this VOC data because it is a lot. And then next summer, we'll have our second auto GC. And again, we're still working towards reporting data to our website, which is also being updated. So Louisville Air Watch 2.0 will update every hour, be more user-friendly. And then a new feature is should be able to access historical data, which is nice. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions from the board? I have one question.
Okay?
Have you run across two compounds having the same retention time?
On this, so the GC that analyzes the higher weight VOCs in multiple places, yes. Now, the way that that's going to be addressed, so under the updates, the system, auto GC systems and CAS, adjust column temperature ramp. So as that column temperature is ramping up, if we slow that ramp rate down a little bit, that can start to pull those peaks apart. The other thing they're going to do is change the 30-meter column to a 60-meter column. So the longer the column, the more separation we can get. So those two things should really help.
Any questions from the public? Well, thank you.
When you do that calibration, scanning hands, then does the instrument automatically adjust that window according to the results?
It does not.
It
So
does
that'll
not.
require a daily check by me, just to make sure that all the peaks are still stable in their retention time windows. So the moisture issue that was causing the shifting is also being addressed right now. And so I don't expect to see that retention time shifting on the C3 to C6 GC as we were saying, because that's a problem specific to that column.
Thank you very much. You know, this is new technology, so I'm sure there's a lot of issues with this, that there's a lot of bugs that the manufacturers have to work out. But it's new technology, relatively new.
Yes, and using it to try to monitor air toxics. We're kind of leading the way on that. So,
Thank you very much.
Quite honestly, she's been a little bit humble, but not only leading the way, but the work that Andrea has done, the work that the district has done, has also impacted this technology across the country, because they're bringing back all those cams to do some of the changes that we uncovered in the work that we've done. So we really are cutting edge in terms of this particular work. She's doing an outstanding job.
Yeah, thank you very much.
thank you.
So, I guess we're at the air quality data. All the board members have had a chance to look at all the information on air quality data. Cover those on. Any questions on air quality? Enforcement report looks good. Excess emission report, any questions from any of the board members? That's good. Is there anything else that we need to, if not, I'm going to adjourn the meeting and wishing everyone a safe and happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you back here in December the 19th. Thank you very much for your attendance.